Dev Podcast, tech products that work.
Welcome again to the Epic Dev Podcast. We build tech that works. And today we're going to discuss website design and the impact that AI has on that discipline.
So here's the thing, right, is to some extent you've built a company around designing people's websites. I mean, not really. You do lots of other things. But now I know from personal experience that I can now just use Claude to build my own website. I don't need you anymore, Lennon. So,
Okay.
so talk to me
cool.
about what's in the future for website design and people like you.
Once again, as I've previously mentioned, it is a tool. Okay. And I think, at least this is my take on it. Okay. If anyone disagrees with my take, then feel free to post comments to your heart's content. And all I ask is at least please start a constructive conversation in the comments. So bring your receipts, meaning give us some examples of what you disagree with and why, and better ways of doing it. Right. So here's my take on it. Okay. So I think that we as humans, we're constantly creating these tools that make our jobs easier. Okay. This has been happening for thousands of years. Okay. And it's never really, okay, I'm sure that automation has put people out of work, but at the same time, it also creates a lot of work. Okay, and that's the way that I see AI. And I'll give you an example. All right. So what I think is happening with website design right now is we can do things a lot faster with a little less experience. You could do some nicer things, but I think what I see a lot of people, the trap that they're falling into is giving everything over to the AI agent and expecting the AI agent to be a miracle worker in that it's going to read your mind. It's going to come up with a design that's completely unique, which it never does. So what I think is a really great way of approaching this, call it like a new discipline, is if we spend a good amount of time on some of the key pages that's going into the website. So let's say, for example, let's paint a little picture. So let's say that we've got a service-based business that wants to develop and design a website that has approximately 20 pages. Now, this is before AI. Already as it stands, what you would have continuity across the pages. Okay, that's something that you're actually actively going for because you don't want to scare the user into being something different every single time. There needs to be some sort of familiarity between the pages. So you would typically have approximately 4 or 5 templates that you would work according to. So the first and the most obvious one being the homepage. Okay, so the homepage can look different from everything else because it's a unique page in that it's somewhat of an introduction to the company, not just the company, but also the website itself. So you can have like little sections of about us that's going to lead you to the about page, and our services that's going to lead you to the service pages, and get in touch with us quickly that might even lead you to the contact page, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So I would strongly recommend that a designer, and a good experienced designer, designs the homepage according to the brief received or somehow extracted from the client. So that's still completely manual. Okay, there's a design software and there's a designer that's manually sitting and designing a homepage. And then of course you can have your back and forth as you've always had. The design can be sent to the client, and if it missed the mark, then there can be some revisions and discussions and whatever. And then you want to move over to some of your other template pages, if we want to call it that. So for example, perhaps this being a service-based business, you're going to have service landing pages. Okay, so maybe one landing page with all the services, or just design one of the services, okay, and what that page would look like. And let's say, for argument's sake, case studies is quite important for the business. So let's design a page of one of the case studies so that we can get a good look at what that's going to look like. And then we might choose something else. Contact pages, okay, I get the argument that in itself is also a very unique page. So fair enough if you want to add that in, although I think AI is going to have a good idea of what a contact page must look like anyway, and it might give you some good ideas and direction. So perhaps you choose something different, like what would a normal content page look like an about us, or where we come from, our history, or something like that. Okay. Now, once you've got those 4 or roughly 5 template pages, I think you can go ahead and develop that. Let's say we're using WordPress to design the site. I would still argue that a developer must manually go and develop those 4 template pages. And then after that, I've no problem connecting the AI agent and starting to instruct the AI agent. You can, for example, upload those designs that you've done, or since you've developed them manually, you can point it to those pages and you can say, here we go. This is our look and feel. This is how we've laid everything out. Pay careful attention to the structure that we've used. We've done that for a reason. You'll see that it's also mobile responsive. You'll see the content. You'll see the type of design we're going for, the look and feel, all of that sort of stuff. Now we just need 2 or 3 other content pages. Look at the about page that we've developed for your inspiration or your direction, and then do these other pages. And it's going to mimic that, So for me, that is where I see the advantage of AI, and where I think you can bring it in a way that's going to add value to the project, because it can then go and create those pages very quickly. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and argue and say that there are designers and developers that can work faster than an AI agent, but I will sit and argue that if you rely on the AI agent for everything is going to start looking the same. It's going to miss the mark on what emotion or idea it is that you actually really have in your head about the artistic direction and the look and feel and so forth. And I just believe that you're not necessarily going to have as good a time as you think you are going to have.
I've got a bit of experience in using AI to build websites. Now, I said this in the last episode, I'm always like sort of adjacent to the software development industry somehow. I've always been like dabbling in websites and creating small little codes from QBasic days to like automate stupid little tasks and whatever. But I'm by no means a software developer. I've never really studied it. I studied a little bit of HTML back in the day, but I've forgotten everything already because I'm getting old now. But I've used AI to write and build a couple of websites for my businesses and whatever else. And I can definitely attest to the fact that first and foremost, it's not as easy as people think it is. You as a software developer can set up Claude to work on a website in a few minutes probably. For me, the first time I did it, it took me literally probably 5 or 6 hours to get this thing speaking properly from Claude to my website, because I don't know how all of this stuff works. But what I think you can maybe talk about a little bit is, I think people, like you say, they think it's a magic tool. Oh, I'm going to ask Claude or ChatGPT to build my website. Hang on. Not that simple, first of all. Second of all, here's some risks that you're not taking into consideration.
I think the more glaring risks probably go a little bit beyond something as simple as a website design project. I know there's been a lot of chatter on social media and in the news headlines about AI agents that have been integrated into workflow in certain companies, that sometimes it makes mistakes and it drops a whole lot of data that it wasn't supposed to drop from a database, or it can do some really dumb things. So we're still at the point where and I don't really have a dog in this fight. I don't know if AI is necessarily going to get so clever that it wouldn't require all the human intervention and sort of babysitting that we're currently having to work into the process flow in our companies. But for the time being, I think it's obvious that if you're going to go in that direction, then you're going to need to make sure that you build human intervention and overview of what's going on. Now, that becomes really tricky, because if you are trying to automate systems, and we spoke about this last time as well, when we said, how are you mitigating that risk of this thing hallucinating and doing a whole bunch of dumb things? So you're kind of caught in this catch-22 situation where it's like, you need to automate these processes. Now, we've been doing automation for a while. We've come a long way with automation, and it's usually these robust, sort of rigid, if this, then that. And it worked really well because a human would be in control of what this machine is going to do in this scenario and what the machine is going to do in that scenario. But now we're trying to take that leap forward, where a human doesn't necessarily even have to decide, the AI agent can. But therein lies the issue, because the AI agent, the decisions it makes doesn't always make sense. So how are you going to implement your automation whilst you're making sure that you have some sort of human intervention in as much capacity as it's required to make sure that you're mitigating the risk of this thing hallucinating and doing weird and wonderful things? I don't have the answer to that. So that is something that I would flag as a risk that you've got to try and manage. So if we just come back a little bit down to the topic at hand, I think the risk, and this could be minimal, or it could be worthwhile looking into, is not necessarily going to show or feel like it has as much value as what you think it does. Okay, I'll give you an example. All right, I was at the traffic lights intersection this morning, and someone handed me a little flyer for some event that's happening this weekend. And I can tell that the flyer was made with AI. I can immediately tell the flyer was made with AI, because it's just got that whole, I don't know why, because there are so many different agents and so many millions of people are using this thing for different things, but their graphics and the style of design always looks exactly the same. I'll give these guys props, because the first thing I did was I looked through that flyer and I studied it intensely to find where it left a little trace of, like, do you like option A or B? Or something like that, because sometimes you actually find that in magazines and newspapers and websites and stuff, which is hilarious. But
there was also a case recently where a senator or something in Canada read a portion of a speech.
Yes, he read the portion of the speech where it said, this is a more casual, would you like me to? But here's what I want to say about that. I'm not necessarily digging at them, because for me, that was an appropriate tool to use for the application at hand, because it's just a little flyer that people are going to look at. They're going to get the time and the date and the event and what's happening at the event, and they're going to throw it away, within a day or two when the event has happened and it's gone. So it doesn't matter. And it's like a little event, it's like a local event. So not a lot of budget has gone into it. So perfect. Most likely what happened over there was the printer was approached, and the printer can print the flyers, and the printer is like, the designer is literally just going to prompt the information that you gave me, and therefore you don't even have to cover artists' fees. We're just going to print it. So 100%, okay? So the question you got to ask yourself is, my website, do I want to come across as something that doesn't have value? Okay, in that regard, because remember now, people are not stupid. It's only been a couple of months, and we can already tell when something is AI or when someone has put a lot of effort and time into this thing. And as such, we attach the value of this thing that we're looking at or interacting with. So you got to ask yourself now, am I like a car wash down the street, and people don't actually really care about that because they're going to, I don't know, I've got a QR code on my business card and I want people to scan that and go to a little mobile friendly website, and these are my operating times and my address, location of my business. And come over there, and for $70-80, I'm going to wash your car and be done with, and that's cool. I don't think people are going to judge you harshly. Like they're going to open the thing up, see, oh my gosh, I can see that an AI agent built this, but who cares? This is information that I just quickly need, and now I'm going to go get my car washed. As opposed to a service that's trying to hook people. Let's say you sell machinery or something to mines, and these machines are like 400,000-500,000 rand a pop. Do you think people are going to feel comfortable doing business with you if they can immediately tell that an AI agent made this thing? I don't know. You tell me in the comments whether you agree or disagree.
We touched now a little bit on like the flyer design thing, right? Which is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Now, again, I'm not like a fabulous graphic designer or anything. I dabbled in it when I was younger, but I don't necessarily have the eye for it. But what I can do, like you said, is I can certainly tell when a flyer was made by AI. And even to the extent where if people go out of their way to try and make it look like it wasn't designed by AI, I can still kind of tell, Part of the reason why is because I'm guilty of doing this. I do the same thing myself. I also design a flyer with AI and then try and pull the AI out of its rhythm, out of its chasm that it's dug itself into, and get it to do something new and unique just so it doesn't look samey. Now, a lot of people don't have the intuition maybe to do that.
That brings up so many good points. You bring up so many good points.
Yeah. So I think what's happening is AI is democratizing output, but it's not necessarily democratizing human intent. We're never going to be able to democratize the human element of the stuff.
Yeah. So I want to say, because you say intent, but I also want to say taste, style.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, the good graphic designers always dress well as well, right? Like, they just know. They know style.
Damn, that's my problem.
I'm sort of in between. Like, I'm like left and right brain, so I can be excused. No, 100%. Yeah. So I actually recently saw a reel on Instagram where, those clips where the one guy acts like the two parties having a dialogue. And he was doing that like with a client persona, and he was like giving his quote, and the client's like, I don't know, that seems expensive. I could just get AI to do it. And then the guy's like, well, I can also get AI to do it. And then the client's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, why don't you rather do it with AI? Because and then he realizes what he's about to say. And he's like, okay, I see. It's like if you put me in a mechanic's workshop with all of his tools, and I still don't know what the hell to do with my car, but put the mechanic there with his 20 years experience in that same workshop with all of his tools, and he's going to work magic because he's got the experience and he knows what he's doing. And AI is sort of trying to replace that experience and that knowledge, but in my opinion, it's not doing the best job at trying to do that, right? So if you're prompting it nicely and you're coming from a position where you know what looks good, what doesn't look good, what works, what doesn't, what the intent should be, like what's the right intent as opposed to the wrong, you're going to get some magic coming out of that tool. And well, we've just landed right back into the seat of the designer and the developer, and add whatever service provider you want over here with their years of experience. And yeah, so maybe the designer or the developer can do the job faster now, which I don't necessarily see that as having to drop the price either, because I sort of look at it as, well, in the past, maybe we wouldn't have spent as much time on those initial page designs. Maybe now we can, because we'll take the bulk of the budget and we'll spend a lot more time getting into the nitty-gritties, and like that term that we graphic designers like to use, pixel pushing. We can do some pixel pushing now, because when it comes to confirming these 4 template designs that we're doing, once that's confirmed and done, and we then develop it, and then from that point onwards, we can save a whole lot of time getting the AI involved to generate and create all the rest of the pages, right? So why not then shift the budget to focus a little bit more over here in the beginning of the process where the designers and the developers are manually involved, and then you're actually increasing the value of the output, and you're involving AI, and you're doing it all in the same timeline and budget. Unless, of course, saving is the objective and the mandate of the project, then sure. Then let's see what we can do. Maybe we get away with just a homepage design and then getting the AI to see what it can do from there. But there's going to be trade-offs, there's pros and cons to everything, and you're going to need to decide on that. Like I said, if you're really not too worried about that quality and the value that the user attaches to what it's seeing and experiencing, if the business case doesn't necessarily focus too heavily on that, then for sure you're going to know. If you go clothes shopping, for instance, you're going to know that this shirt over here is way better quality than that shirt over there, but you know what you're in the market for right now. So if you're going to pay $50 for a t-shirt and you're happy with that, then fine.
This actually brings me to something else I've been wanting to ask you, and maybe this will benefit some listeners. And that is, there's a whole other world of web design that I think the average person, and specifically average business owner, doesn't necessarily understand. And that, I don't know what the right terminology is, so you can correct me. I don't know if it's architecture or logic. I always use the word logic, right? It's the logic of the form that you're filling in versus, we spoke about forms in the last episode a little bit. If anybody didn't watch that episode, definitely go watch it on user experience. But there's logic as to how the back end of this website works, depending on how complicated the website is, of course. But I think people underestimate the value of that logic and sometimes the complexity of that logic. So talk a little bit about this back-end logic and the kinds of things you guys are thinking about on a more complex website that is going to be missed by an AI. Definitely. I guarantee it.
Once again, it's the way that you utilize the AI agent to build something for you. So a programmer or a software developer would think about the project the same way he would think about a project if he was going to manually code this thing. So he will first start with an ERD. It's like a database diagram, entity relational diagram, I think is what an ERD is, because he's been trained to think about the foundation first, right? And then there's these different layers. You build it the same way you build a house up from digging those trenches for the foundation and then laying the foundation and then the wall on those, and he's going to do it step by step like that. A developer is going to think exactly the same way, and he's going to instruct the AI agent like that. So he's going to say, okay, first, this is the system that I want, and I want you to sketch out the ERD for me. And then the thing's going to sketch it out. Developers are going to look at it and go, no. Okay, I see what you've done there. Good attempt, but you didn't take this into account. And from experience, I know that that's always a thing. And I would separate those two tables, and I would link in this table, and I would rather split them over here. And he's going to get that foundation ready. And the AI is along the way also kind of learning. There's a bit of a memory bank going on there. The next step is going to just be a little bit easier. But there is every now and then where this thing wants to go completely south if you keep telling it north. But because you're reviewing how these things are coming out, you're catching it and you're directing it back on path, And that's exactly what happens over there. It's like, I think a layman won't understand any of those complexities, and he doesn't think about the project in those specific terms and principles. And well, yeah, then the AI agent's just going to do whatever it wants and spit out whatever it wants. And I don't know why they're really good at pretending that this thing that oh, actually I do know why. There's a debate. There's actually a huge argument going on where there's a camp that says that AI must always aim to please, so much so that it will bend the truth to please the user. And there's a camp that says no, you must be more realistic than aim to please. And I think at the moment, the camp that says aim to please is winning because they kind of have, I suppose, the marketing element in mind of like, okay, but humans aren't going to like using it if it keeps contradicting them, or if it's like a little bit of a know-it-all or comes across, I don't know,
You said something just now that sparked this thought of how you as a web developer are going to dig the trenches first, and you're going to produce this ERD. You see, a term I never knew even existed, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to build on a foundation. Now, I got this thought that when you put in a prompt as a user, the average user is going to put in a prompt, I want a website that looks like this or that does this. What we're doing is we're starting from the top down. When we speak to the AI as a average user, I'm starting with what I want to see on the website, and that's actually all I've got. We're top down building instead of bottom up building.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's for lack of knowledge. That's a healthy way of thinking of it. Is don't take age-old training for granted. Same human training that we've always done right from the start is if you want to do this thing and produce this thing, then you need to start here. And, it starts with step 1, and it's going to be a 4-year training course or whatever. And first I'm going to teach you the foundation, the principles, the history of this thing that it is that you want to do. And then I'm going to take you through the processes of putting something like this together, or I might challenge your thinking of putting something different together and then coming back to what it is that we want to do. And we're going to go through it step by step, and which is first in its basic form, and then I'm going to challenge you to do it a little bit more intricate and think out of the box, like introduce something to me that you've never seen before. Then I'm going to put you, I guess, shadowing someone that's been doing it for 20 years, and you're going to learn a couple of trade secrets from them. And that's really the only way that we actually know how to build something from the bottom up, right? Because we've been trained on everything that goes into this discipline so that we know and understand everything from the bottom up. And again, I don't know how clever AI is going to become in the next couple of years, but in its current state, it's a bit of a fantasy of us to think that we can just prompt it from the top and it will understand everything from the bottom layer up to the top layer, and it's going to do everything for us, and we're going to come out the hero in this scenario. As opposed to the senator that's got egg on his face standing over there reading a speech that's got a prompt in it, and the entire world is now laughing at him. Don't be that guy. You're right. Don't be that guy. Don't take this thing for granted. It's just another tool. Like when we went from typewriters to computers, we were suddenly able to do things so much faster. Like the other day, I was filling out a form and I made a mistake, and I had gone 80% down the form, and I literally got in my car and went to the shop to go get Tipp-Ex because I was not going to fill that thing out again. And I actually thought to myself, we take for granted the fact that we've got backspace, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have backspace. So now we can do things faster because you're like on page 10, you make a mistake and you just hit backspace. If I went from typewriter to Word document and I type so fast, but I'm not reading and proofreading what it is that I type, I'm going to be in the same trouble than if I did that with the typewriter.
Bringing a couple of these conversation points together, you're speaking about these two camps. The one that says, let AI be a little bit more agreeable. The other camp that says, no, let it be more rigid and factual. And then you're talking about how you went as a software developer, but in every industry, how you go for training and you receive training to be able to do the thing from the bottom up. Now, there would be people who would argue, no, but AI has that training because it has access to all the information. But I suppose the problem comes in, and we're just sort of regurgitating the same thing over and over to some extent, but it's worth discussing the nuance for the person out there who's considering just building their own website using AI, right? Which is what we're talking about. Part of the problem is if you look at it like that, if you say, okay, AI has the training and I just need to prompt it because it's got the training. The problem is it's agreeable, and it's going to just literally do exactly what you ask it to do. If you say, give me a website that does this and looks like this, it's going to give you a website that does this and looks like this.
I mean, I have to push back a little and say that I have seen some advances in this. Like, I don't know if I'm biased, but I've been using Claude a lot as opposed to the other models. And I appreciate the way that Claude, when I start with a complex task, I generally try and give it as thorough a brief as I possibly can, which now lately involves me hitting that little record button and just waffling off for paragraphs upon paragraphs. It seems to work quite well, and it saves me a lot of time. Its initial responses seem to be these like multiple choice queries where it goes, okay, I need to familiarize myself with this project and see how exactly you want me to do this thing. So would you prefer, in this scenario, would you prefer A, B, or C? And I go, or other, and I go, okay, this. And then it asks me that a couple of times over. So I appreciate that. And I think that's probably their response to this issue that we're raising, right? But then we still have to answer the question, like, why does it, like, I know people do it for fun or whatever, but I see it a lot on social media where they go, create me LinkedIn, and then it spits out this empty shell that's got absolutely no logic built into it. Like, yes, it got the user interface somewhat right, but so what? There's nothing to it, So you have to ask, like, why does it do that? And I suppose maybe it's the agreeableness. Maybe it's trying to take into account that if it were to build LinkedIn for you right now, it's going to cost you a fortune. Maybe it's trying to save you from going down a credit hole so big that you'd never be able to climb your way out of it again. I don't know. There could be a lot of reasons. But the fact of the matter is, this is where we're at the moment, and there's a way to use the tool to your benefit, and there's a way to make it spit out garbage that you go and present to other people thinking you're so cool, but you're not. Because people are seeing through that. So just don't fall into that trap, I guess.